New Orleans, New Orleans, Nolens, as they say in New Orleans, Louisiana. This is one of my favorite cities. I have been there 3 times, and whenever it comes up, people say, oh, I have to go back, or oh, I've never been, and tell me where to go. So, this video includes my top 10 tips on things to know about Nolens. Number 1, New Orleans is full of art. It is everywhere. There are street artists that have paintings everywhere. There are galleries that are open actually super late, which is really cool that you have the option after dinner to pop into a gallery sometimes as late as 10 o'clock at night that they stay open, which to me is so much fun to see art. I should add that the art there is like nowhere I've ever seen before in terms of the sculpture and the painting, and there's like 3D things and things that are just out of the box, and I think it's a city that's definitely known for creative people, and they just flock there and people go there to buy artwork. Make sure to spend a little bit of money on something that sings to you, that's beautiful, that reminds you of your trip to New Orleans. I personally bought a little ceramic sheep on one of my trips to New Orleans, and it's in my living room, and it is so cute, and every time I look at it, well, 1, I love it, and 2, it reminds me of my trip. Number 2, you cannot go to New Orleans without hearing music. It's really big in terms of jazz music, although I will say I'm part of the minority of the population that does not like jazz music. Sorry. But I know most people do, and you'll hear live music in the streets, in galleries. You'll hear it in bars, everywhere. And in general, the talent that is playing music, it's really cool. Definitely stop and listen. And of course, if you are a fan of jazz music, you will love it. Number 3, make sure you do walking tours. The information you will find from the guides there, it's not anything you can find on Google. A lot of it is our personal historical stories of things that have gone down in New Orleans. And the walking tours that I suggest, they have ones that are cemetery tours, ghost tours. Hold on. Well, you get the picture. If you look up New Orleans walking tours, there's a ton. Oh, of course, you have to do walking tours of the Garden District, which is a whole separate area of New Orleans, and there are these huge mansions and flowers, and there's so much story behind these houses. And in the past, there was slavery and slave quarters, and it's a very dark history as to what went down there, and you don't want to go to New Orleans and miss hearing about the history. I actually personally did a tour by, I think it was called Walking Tours by Stephen. I'm not sponsored at all, but I absolutely loved hearing the real history of how New Orleans came to be. So on the note of the walking tours, that brings me to my 4th tip in terms of finding out facts, is that you need to check out the creepy stuff about New Orleans. New Orleans has a really dark history. They had slavery, they had men coming back from the war who had terrible surgeries to try and fix them. They had serial killers, they had plagues, they had bug infestations. There were just so many things that went bad there. And also part of their history is that a lot of prisoners from other countries were brought, or it might just be one country, but prisoners were brought to New Orleans, and they're the ones who founded the city, yes, they were the ones that founded the city and created the music and art and a lot of the culture, but it came from people who actually were kind of riffraff. So that created a very dark past, and you don't want to miss hearing about that. On a side note, on my last trip, I went to a Voodoo museum and a haunted museum, and they were so creepy. It gives me the chills. One of the museums actually was in the place that a guy murdered his girlfriend. So you're standing in the kitchen and they say this is where the guy chopped his girlfriend to bits and her head was in a pot and her limbs were in the oven. Really creepy. Oh, there are the chills again. But that's part of what makes New Orleans so charming. My 5th tip is that New Orleans has plenty of museums that you don't want to miss. My personal favorite is the Pharmacy Museum, which you get to hear about all the former things that before people had the knowledge about medicine. It's what people used to do to try to get better when they were sick. And people would try anything. If you imagine you're dying of some disease, they say, here, take this. You just take it. And a lot of it was completely useless and also could kill you. So definitely check that museum out. I learned so much stuff that was kind of horrifying. One thing that I will give away at the Pharmacy Museum, people actually used to take, wealthy people used to take their medicine covered with gold. So they took like gold pills. But the thing when you take a pill covered in gold is that gold is not absorbed by your system. So you swallow it and it just goes right through and out into the toilet. So you don't get better and your money is down the drain. My sixth tip, as most of you know, or maybe you don't know, now you know, I love to dance. So New Orleans, unfortunately, is not a dancing city. It's part of my seventh tip. It's a big drinking city. So it's kind of like Las Vegas, that you're allowed to have open containers and walk around and drink at all hours of the day. So it's a really big party city. People are kind of dancing in the streets, and it's wild and fun. But if you actually proper dance, like I Latin dance, not the place for you. I mean, it does exist, but it's not in the French Quarter, which is the area where all the main partying is going on and all the art and the music. It's not there. So if you plan to dance, either you have to drive pretty far to go find a dance spot, or don't expect to be dancing, proper dancing in New Orleans. I also want to add, in terms of the drinking is huge, literally huge. They have these big mugs that people carry around called, I think, big ass beers, and it says big ass beer on the mug, and they have like fish bowls and straws sticking out of them and funnels, crazy drinking. So again, if that's your style, by all means drink it up. Me personally, I'm not a big drinker, but I was so entertained seeing all the wild people partying and drinking these crazy things. So it's like free entertainment, seeing who's drunk and who's doing what and acting silly. And this type of drinking, by the way, they block off the streets after a certain time, and all the lights go on at night, and it's like you could just walk around in the streets, no cars, and observe or party or drink or dance in the streets, whatever you want. It's so entertaining just to be in that energy with all those people. Actually, I want to add on that, I have gone to New Orleans 3 times now, but never during Mardi Gras, because New Orleans, any night of the week, is a party city and is very crowded. So I cannot imagine myself, maybe you like this, but I cannot imagine going during Mardi Gras, because it would be even more crowded and you can barely get through the streets as it is. So tread with caution if you're curious about Mardi Gras, that you're going to be really crammed in. My 8th tip is the food. It is so delicious in New Orleans. Oh my goodness. Part of the culture is they have a lot of spices and Creole flavors. That's part of the French history there and the culture. And then also being near the water, they have wonderful seafood. So I personally love getting fried soft shell crab, which I had as part of like an eggs Benedict kind of dish. Delicious. What else? They also have like gumbo, which I'm not a big fan of, but you should try it if you go there because they have really good flavors. So yeah, in terms of the food, don't go to New Orleans on a diet, shall we say, but definitely go and expect to enjoy some really delicious food and then do a whole lot of walking. My 9th tip in terms of the food, hold on, I'll show you my cool ring. 9 is a weird number to hold up. My 9th tip in terms of the food are the beignets. They get a whole separate category. I know they're food, but beignets, they stand alone. So these are donuts. However, they're different from your ordinary donut because they have buttermilk in them, and they're kind of airy in the middle, and they're crisp on the outside, and they have powdered sugar on the outside. So I guess it's kind of like a zeppoli that you get at a fair, but not as greasy. They're somehow kind of light, even though they're probably not light. So with the beignets, there's a place called Café du Monde, which means World Cafe, translating from the French. You have to go, it's outdoors, it's really adorable. My tip though is there is a huge line to get into Café du Monde since it's famous and kind of a tourist attraction. It is a tourist attraction. However, they are open 24/7. So rather than standing in a crazy long line at, let's say, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, go at like 9 o'clock at night. There is no line. You just walk right up, get your donuts, get your coffee, or I'm calling them donuts, get your beignets, get your coffee, and there's no line or wait at all, and they're delicious. However, Café du Monde is not the home of my favorite beignets. My favorite beignets are found at Café Beignet. There are actually 2 Café Beignets, and the reason I have selected Café Beignet over Café du Monde for the best beignets in New Orleans is because they're a little bit crisper on the outside. So when you bite into the hot, doughy donut, there's a little crunch on the outside, and then you get the powdered sugar. It is divine. And also as you eat, they always come with a plate of 3. As you eat the 3, they stay crisp, and that little bit of texture on the outside to me is just worth all those delicious calories. And at Café du Monde, if your first one is a little crisp, by the time you get to donut number 3 and number 2 and 3, I can't count today. By the time you get to 2 and 3, it's lost that little crispness and they're kind of like pillows. And again, totally delicious. I've eaten every single one, but Cafe Beignet is my favorite. Okay, I hope I have counted correctly. And this should bring me to my 10th tip, which is get some exercise while you're there at beautiful Louis Armstrong Park. This park is so beautiful, it's pretty empty. There are fountains, little bridges, and flowers and artwork. It's really pretty just to walk around, but since they do have all these different structures, it's actually like the perfect park to run around, do some push-ups, run some stairs, do some lunges. It really helps if you get up first thing in the morning. This is what I did. I was actually still full from the food the night before every single morning. So I would get up, gym clothes on, and just run to the park and do like a really good calisthenic mix it up workout with the push-ups, the lunges, the stairs. And then I got a good sweat going on, shower, and I felt ready to start my day and then ready for some delicious breakfast. Those were all my tips for you for New Orleans, just things to keep on the lookout. Again, it's one of my favorite cities because there's so much to do there. You actually don't have to plan very much. You just kind of get there, see what you pass. You'll see the museums. Oh, and also with the museums, they have really amazing historic home tours, both in the French Quarter and in the Garden District. So definitely check those out if you have time, because you hear, again, more of the history and who lived there and what they did and how they made their money, because a lot of those homes are so beautiful and really luxe, and it's neat to hear the story behind them. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I will definitely make more of these as I explore other cities. Thanks for watching. Bye. Now I'm totally craving a beignet.